All right, welcome back, Be Better Tribe. I have a guest here that I'm really excited to have on the podcast. So, welcome back. Reminder: this podcast is full of stories, lessons, and leadership journeys. And luckily for us, our leadership journey and our childhood and where we grew up kind of shaped us together. And so, I'm honored and excited to bring on Austin Swift. Austin and I have been friends for close to 30 years now. We grew up together in Santa Cruz. We played on the same sports teams. We had countless hours competing against each other. We learned in the same school, and we were just really figuring out life side by side. But long before our careers, our titles, our LinkedIn profiles, it was rooted in our friendship. And this is built through wins, losses, a lot of shared history, a lot of fun times at our friends' houses in a back house. It was fantastic. And, the reason why I'm so happy to bring on Austin, and Austin was always a competitor in the best sense of the word. The drive eventually took him all the way to winning a national championship in basketball, an achievement that speaks not just to talent, but discipline, teamwork, and resilience. And what's been incredible to watch is how those same qualities have carried into every chapter of his life. So over the years, I've seen Austin channel that drive into building things that actually last. He's been part of starting companies, is advising others as they grow, and spending more than a decade at one of the top companies in the world, Google. What's impressed me most is how grounded he stays through all of it. Sharp perspective, long-term thinking, and a genuine interest in helping others win. He's someone that people trust when the stakes are high, and someone that I can always count on, whether that's career, parenting, or any advice at all. So today's conversation is personal. It's about growth over the decades, lessons learned on and off the court, and how the values we build early in life show up later in leadership, career, and purpose. So Austin, grateful to have your friendship, grateful to have you here, and excited to chat with you on the Be Better podcast.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited. And that was a hell of an intro.
Well, I mean, man, you deserve it. We look back at our closest friends, and sometimes we're like, oh man, it's just Austin from when we were like 9 and 10 years old playing basketball. But now, man, I'm really proud of you. You've done some amazing things, dude.
I appreciate it. Likewise. Feelings definitely mutual.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So where we're going to start, Austin, is you and I, like I notated earlier, we've been friends for almost 30 years. We grew up in Santa Cruz. We played sports. We competed on early in life. I still remember times where we'd have all the guys out and we'd be playing flag football and mud football out in the park and having a good time. So I believe that some of those values we learned back in the day are translated into later in life. And so what I would love to ask you is, what values from those early years do you think still show up most in who you are today?
Yeah, I can remember a lot of those days in the parks playing mud football and playing basketball out in the front in the mini hoop. Just for context for everybody, I was dunking on Julian. And,
yeah, if you don't know, I am 5'7" on my good days. Austin is towering over me, so dunking over me is not an accomplishment.
No, but I think I look back at those days with a lot of fondness, and definitely shaped who I am today. And I think a lot of the lessons just come in the way that we had a really tight knit group. And that group was really built out of like respect and competition. And I think having those two elements as your core ingredients to like a circle of friends allows you to work with one another, have mutual respect for one another, but also like hold each other accountable. I know many times, there'd be certain people that are doing something crazy or went a little bit too hard on the football field, and it wasn't a issue for somebody to call them out, and it wasn't an issue for somebody to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, like we should change it. Or we played junior high school basketball, and every single practice was a competition. No matter if we were running liners, no matter if we were doing just layup lines, and we appreciated the competition. It was fun for us. And I think that really built a sense of camaraderie and a sense of friendship that just lasted throughout the years. And, we could go years without seeing each other, without our group getting together. And as soon as we come back together, it's like things never stopped. And it's like we just picked up right where we left off, because I think we all share very similar kind of frame of reference and a frame of mind, just built on a lot of those things that we were doing when we were kids.
Man, I love that perspective. And like, it's like the respect and the competition. Like, we would get mad at each other if we lost. We would get pissed. And like, there was a lot of pushing and shoving. But I think what I loved what you said is like, we kind of policed ourselves. Like, we wouldn't allow anyone to take it over the edge. And if some people were getting really serious and stuff, we'd have those individuals and it would rotate. All of us, I think, would step in and kind of like make sure that, hey, this is like, the friendship means more than winning or losing here, but we're gonna have some fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to push each other,
Totally.
It's like we're here, even if we're playing in the backyard, some people like playing football and we're better at it than others. Some
Totally.
people are better at basketball, some people are better at soccer, but we always played these different sports. And, you could tell the ones who were competing in that sport, they were going a little bit
Yeah,
harder
yeah, yeah.
during that session. But then everybody else kind of had to up their game. And I really appreciated everybody pushing one another and having that, really shared commitment to just having fun, but also getting better.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also like having fun, and then transitioning to like being a parent. Obviously, I'm a parent of two, three, one on the way. You're a parent of three, which is like crazy for me to think about. Like, I still view us as like those high school kids just having fun, but
Right?
um, I feel like our parents did a phenomenal job of giving us the space and freedom to explore and do things. Like, we didn't have cell phones. Maybe it's because we didn't have social media. We were just kind of like, you go to school, after school, you get a couple hours to go play, have fun, do things outside with this group of individuals. Like, what do you think? Like, because it was all of our parents were open and okay with that. Like, do you think it was just like our parents' generation? Like, I'm trying to think about it for my kids. Like, how did we have that freedom? Like, what do you think that came from?
That's a great question. I've actually talked about this with other folks. I honestly, I think that there's two unique factors that kind of like collided when we were growing up. And one was living in a city like Santa Cruz, which is a smaller, more tight knit community where our parents didn't really care. Like if we, after school, we all just went to Burger King or went to the park by ourselves, walked around, and we were kind of just meandering around the neighborhoods because honestly, like our parents probably got calls from people that they knew, like, "Hey, I saw your kid walking around," and it wasn't that big of a deal because I think the community really supported us, and it wasn't just our parents; it was also people around our parents and other adults in the community that kind of looked out for us and also allowed us to really explore and do those things. So I think growing up in a smaller community like that is kind of functions in that way. And then I do think that our parents provided us enough space
Yeah,
to explore, to be creative, to have these friendships, and didn't really want to micromanage us. And I think, honestly, I got to give them a lot of credit because not all the parents had the same perspective,
yeah,
but I think they all valued the same things, even though a lot of them approached it differently. And when they all came from the same, hey, we're just trying to make sure our kids have the best experience growing up, they bought into let's create this community of parents and our kids will be friends for a long time. And I think that perspective and that commitment from our parents resonated and allowed us to just be like I felt like I had 4 or 5 different parents because I
yeah,
was
totally.
jumping around from house to house and it
Yeah.
wasn't a big thing for me just walking to somebody's house and it felt like I was family. So I think having our parents committed to that was huge.
Yeah, and I feel like what you said resonated. It's like we built our own little community within our friend group of like, you can go to any, like, you can go to any house, you can go to any friend group. The parents were willing to like put us in check if they needed to. Like, if we were getting a little bit rowdy, they, regardless of what parent it was, they would make sure that, hey, we don't do that here. And like, I think
Right.
it's like community policing. It was like us as friends just holding each other accountable. And I remember, I mean, getting into like high school and stuff, there was moments where we all didn't make the good decisions. Like, all of us had moments in time where we probably made bad decisions, but like, one of our friends was going to go do something cool, whether it's you were going to a basketball tournament, a national tournament, whether it was me going to a soccer tournament, whether it was like Peter, Trevor, Zach, Eric, any of us, We
Right.
and all of the other guys I have, there's a lot of us. If we all went somewhere, everyone had like, hey, I can't go crazy. Like I'm not gonna do anything tonight because I have this, and then it would lock us into like, oh, maybe I need to take the SATs next week. Maybe I need to the ACTs. Maybe I
Exactly.
need to get something here, and it just kind of evolved, which was really fun.
No, 100%. And I really appreciate the perspective of everybody had their own thing.
Yeah,
There was like
totally.
little mini groups of people, like, I had my little basketball group, you had soccer friends. We all didn't go to the same high school.
Totally.
So we grew, our friend group grew and our community grew, but there's always been a core to our group, and a core family, like core families that kind of instilled this level of ethics and respect that permeated beyond just the core friends that we had when we were 10, 11, 12. And then when we got into high school, it kind of permeated to our other friend groups that we
Hmm.
created. And I think the cool thing about our situation was, it wasn't that I was left and went off and said, I'm just going to hang out with my basketball crew. And you went off and said, I'm just going to hang out with
Yeah.
my soccer. We actually combined our crew, and like all of a sudden now your friends are my friends and my friends from basketball are your friends, and we can all hang out together or separately. And I think that's a really unique thing.
Yeah, and I think it's like as you take it into from a friend group at like 10 years old, 8 years old, which is unique, man. We've been friends like 6, 7, 8, some of us, and then it can continue to morph, which is great. Like it does translate into other things in life where you are able to build a really strong network, at least for, I mean, from what I've seen you in your career, it's like we're using these skill sets to help us elevate into like being able to build a bigger networking group. And I know that you and I have connected on candidates in terms of like, hey, you've worked with a really good person, like you pass them my way, and vice versa, which is always great. And I was talking to the Cal Poly students the other day, and I said the number one thing that you're going to want to do coming out of college is to network, and build a community around you that's going to be able to lift you up and help you in those other opportunities. So
Yeah,
I think that.
actually, I think the way that I view networking is very similar to that, but I think I try to compartmentalize my network
Ooh, okay.
into three categories.
Yep.
And the first category are your core network,
Mm,
which is people who may be in the same kind of professional level as you and maybe in the same industry, but also share common interests,
mm,
also may have, a common life situation, that have kids and things. So you can connect with them on many levels. And so when you are thinking about, hey, I want to change careers, or I need life advice, or I want to, you go to your core network first. So like for you, for me and you, it's like you're in my core network because we're in the same industry,
hmm.
we do similar roles in our jobs. We both have kids. We both have all these things in common. We know each other so well that if something pops up, I'm going to call you
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Then you got a secondary network where it may not overlap everything in your life. You may be friends at work, you may be colleagues, you may like to hang out with each other after work, but maybe they don't have kids. And so
Yeah.
maybe like you can't relate on certain levels to that person, or that person can't relate to you on certain levels. So you may not be as um, dependent on them in certain situations as you would that core network. And then you have that third tertiary network, which is kind of those people that are on the fringes that may just be colleagues, or maybe
Mm.
you just met them at a trade show or something like that. And then I try to filter my communication with those people by those three tiers, right? So like the core network is like, we're going to go on a golf trip, or we did a
Yeah,
golf
yeah, yeah.
trip and all this kind of stuff.
Or I haven't talked to you in 3 months. I'm gonna call you because I got to talk about this one situation
Yeah,
that I know you've dealt with.
exactly. Or like I got a candidate, I'm going to send you a text really quickly and be like, "Hey, here's somebody I think you should hire." And then from there, it's like the secondary network. Maybe you talk to them twice a year or once a year or whatever. And then the third network is like if you run into them, you know who they are. You can pick them out of a crowd, but maybe you're not super close to them. And so I think as you get further along in life, as your time gets more valuable, as you start to have more responsibilities, you have to start to kind of um, in my opinion, compartmentalize who you're talking to, who you're spending your time around. It's just because you're not going to have a lot of time, and also you want to make sure the time that you're spending with people is quality, and that they're on the same paths or have already gone through paths that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, that resonates because it's like a lot of the times you can spread yourself too thin if you're trying to be that core network with everyone. And I think there's that one comment. I don't know exactly. I probably am not going to quote it the right way, but there are there's the core networking group that you have is probably pretty solidified here. You know what I mean? Like they've been on that same path with you for a while. But then the individuals in the third group, it's like individuals that are in glimpses of time where you're in the same interest at that time, and it's like
Yes,
kind of like the train stop friends where it's like that's cool and that's great and you can take so much away from them, but like building that core network and building your secondary network is where
exactly.
you can spend the time to help elevate yourself for
Exactly,
sure.
exactly. And
Okay,
then you can also think about it at like a number of people in each one of those.
totally.
You can't have 100 people in your core network. There's just not enough time, right?
It's tough.
You have to pick and choose who you're
Yeah.
going to keep in that core network, and hopefully, those are the people that you go to for advice. You spend a lot of time with, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the way that I try to think about it, and it's helped me a lot with, um, you know, career advice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of is relating to the next question that I want to ask you because you've experienced the highs and the highest highs of athletics, in my opinion, winning a national championship. And there's probably plenty of tough moments, but what I wanted to connect to, I was going to ask you one question, but I'm actually going to pivot slightly. You had a choice. I remember we were talking about this when you were going to college of what college you would go into and what college you would join. And I feel like, obviously, looking back, you picked the best one for you because I feel like you were able to accomplish so much. And I know that we might not be able to relate it back to like that core network, but what was the gut feeling of like going to that school, being part of that team? Like, what made you want to choose them over other opportunities? Because you had other opportunities, and on paper, the other opportunities might have looked better. And
Yeah.
so, like, what about that connected to your like building out your network was all tied together?
That's a really good question. During that time, um, and just to give context for the listeners, it was I was leaving my existing college, Montana, and going and transferring to another school. And I was looking at Cal Poly Pomona, where you went, and Peter and others went.
Probably slow,
And
slow.
sorry, Cal Poly Slow is Cal Poly Slow, where Peter
Yeah, you could have
Julie
moved into the best
went.
house. We would have been roommates in college.
Yeah,
But it's like
exactly.
it was
You guys
all
already
there.
had a room for me.
It was all there for you. We would have made room. It was all there.
It was all there. It was all there.
You won,
D1. I was also looking at Pepperdine,
which
and I
is
had,
another top tier school. Holy moly,
yeah,
yeah.
another grade school, another D1, and then Cal Poly Pomona was a D2, and ultimately where I went.
Hmm.
And I was actually like ready to go to slow just because you guys were all there, and I was kind of like really familiar with it. But honestly, I relied on my brother's advice a lot
Wow,
because
love that.
he went with me to all these visits, um, and during that time, it was hard for me to understand what was going to be the best choice, and so he really gave me some really sound advice around, hey, this is the time of your life where you have to start being your own person and start like creating your own path. And he said, look, you have a core group of friends. He said, and literally he said, your guys are always going to be friends for life. He said, but it may be come a time where you need to start to create your own network outside of that group of friends. And that's not to be a detriment to that group, is that you're going to expand that group. You're going to have your own, carve your own path. And he said it's not going to be as glamorous as playing D1. The facilities aren't going to be as nice and all that kind of stuff. Um, he said, but you're going to have your own experiences that are going to be in complement to what your other friends are doing. And so I took that to heart, and did make the tough decision to go to Cal Poly Pomona, even though I was
Like
like
slow, dude,
I was
slow.
I was looking I was leaning towards slow, but I think that advice pushed me over the edge, and I said I'm just going to jump in and try to do something different and do something new and try to take my own path, and it worked out.
Man, and then like the impact you were able to make on that team, the team camaraderie that you built. I remember going down and watching a couple games. Like it just seemed like, and watching you on TV, and like it just seemed like y'all built such a great team, which is really cool. And you know what's crazy is that story that you shared was kind of a similar story of me way back in eighth grade because I was going to a different school and I had a core group of friends at that time, right? And I knew all of y'all at the other middle school where it's like I don't know, like I have this already. Maybe I should try to do something different because it seems like our interests and our likes are more aligned than this other one. And so like I don't know if that was the same for you, but like that advice your brother gave, like, oh man, that resonates for me because it reminded me of that decision that I made too. That was a little bit tougher decision. That was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but like it was ultimately the right one for me, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think our interests at that time were aligned. I think we were all, working towards things, but um, honestly, like it was such a great decision, not only athletically because we did end up winning the national championship, but also socially and personally. Like I built really great friendships there. You guys have, been we party together. Like our core group from Santa Cruz, plus like friends from Cal Poly Pomona, and your guys' friends from Cal Poly Slow. Like now, it's kind of like uh, just an extension of these different networks and communities that we've been able to build. And some of those folks are some of my closest friends in that core network, just as some of the folks from Santa Cruz are part of my core network. And so, I just have a different perspective, people from different areas, people from different walks of life. All those things I think are really important to just expand, you as a person, your perspectives, and grow that network, as we talked about.
Yeah, and I was always the thing that I walk away, and correct me if I'm wrong here, from the first three questions that I've asked is first thing is like finding a group that is very respectful, competitive, and holds each other accountable. Like that's crucial for any group that you have in any situation that you're in. It could be at work, it could be a team, it could be classmates, it could be friends. The second thing is like sometimes you got to just step out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you got to make a decision that's maybe the right gut feeling, or the decision that's going to make you grow as a person a little bit more, which
Right.
is really exciting. And that advice from your brother is fantastic. And then the second thing I'm gonna say is, or the next question I'm gonna ask is, when we think about success, like I would view you as a very successful person. Like you've done a lot of amazing things, but success changes over time. It changes from when we were kids to when we were like young adults to where we're at now. And so like looking back, and you're not 39, I'm 39, you're 38. You always like to remind me, uh, 38 years, like how do you define success now, and how has that evolved over the last, 5 to 10 years?
Oh, man, it's a great question. It's evolved a lot. I think when we were kids, and because we were all involved in sports, success is wrapped up in your identity as an athlete. And as when you're young and you identify so much as an athlete, you know, if you're doing well in athletics, then you feel like you're doing well in life. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
and then when you stop playing sports, and then that's no longer your identity, you kind of have to pivot to, what you're doing in work or your career, and are you advancing in your career? And that's another kind of success metric, and that one's a little bit more ambiguous than athletics. Athletics is like you can see the scoreboard at the end. It's a clock. It ends. If you won or lost. It's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. Work is a little bit different. It's a little bit more ambiguous. You can see yourself getting promoted, but
Mhm.
maybe that's not the path you want to take, or maybe that's not the right career that you want to go towards. And so I think it just takes a little bit more thinking, a little bit more, um, concerted effort to understand, is this the right path I'm on? Is this the success that I want to see for myself?
Sure.
And really taking the time to define that, which is a little bit different for everybody. And for me, you know, uh, it's been, uh, I've seen different levels of success where I've defined different ways of success. And now with kids, I define it even differently, because now you got to throw in the fact that, being a father is another thing that I want to be very successful at.
Totally.
And that's even more ambiguous than how it shows up as,
Yeah.
in your career. And so, but again, I do lean back on a lot of the lessons that we learned when we were kids, and that's the way that I want to shape my own kids. So I think because we had so many great examples of parents who were amazing, the community that we built, the friendships that we built, I just really lean on that and say, I want to build the similar community that we had when we were kids with my own kids. And that's kind of how I start to define success as a father is, am I putting my kids in situations that they're going to grow? Because it can't be all relying on you as a dad to say, I'm going to teach them every single thing, because they're not going to learn every single thing from you. They're going to learn most of the things from the community that they're in, from their friends, from other people. And so are you, but my responsibility is put them in situations where you know they're going to grow in a positive way, and put them around a community of folks that match your ethics and your values. And I think that right there is the foundation of, creating a really good family dynamic and a community that's going to allow you to, hopefully be a good parent and father at the end of the day.
Yeah, man. Life was simple when we were young. Success was, did you win or you lose? Did you get a good grade? Did you not? Then it's
Exactly.
like the career path. It's like, oh yeah, promotions is one sign of success, right? Like that's one sign. But being a parent, man, I love how you define that though. Like I feel the same exact way, and I'm a little bit farther away from your, like I've been a parent for 5.5 years. What are you like on year number 8, 10?
Yeah. My oldest
10.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, he'll be, yeah, 10. He'll be 11 in September.
There you go. So like, I mean, you've been doing this 6 years more than I have. And I just find that I just want to provide a space for my kids to be happy and grow, right? It's like,
Exactly.
be happy, be challenged, get better, and be in a like safe environment where they can just be themselves for sure.
100%.
Which is, it's not
100%.
easy. I mean, like you said, like being a dad, like my ranking of how good I am wavers every day. Who knows? Like it's crazy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done for sure.
Yeah. I mean, before we started this, I was telling you about how much anxiety I have watching my son play sports. And that's another barrier, or something that I realized is when you're playing sports, it's one thing to be competitive. When you have no control and it's your own kid out there playing, then all of a sudden it's even more pressure. I get more nervous driving to my kids' games than I ever got going to my own games.
I love it. Ah, man. And I know your mom, she's gonna be screaming from the stands, loosey goosey now. I remember she used to yell at me on the mound when I was pitching.
Exactly.
So maybe you need to call her and ask her for some shears. Maybe that'll lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, probably. I probably need to
You
just
gotta stay
go into the
loosey
cheer band
goosey.
and start.
You
Yeah,
gotta stay, you
exactly.
gotta stay loosey goosey. All right, awesome. Well, I appreciate all the time we've spent with me here. I have one last question though. And it's really an important question to me as we're both fathers. And I think, in my opinion, not just the youth, but people do need to hear about like just advice and things that you would give to the next generation. So the question I want to ask is, if you were to tell your younger self advice from your current state, what would that be and why?
Um, it's a great question. I would tell myself two things that I learned. I think the first thing is that I was doing this to a degree, but I think I learned how to do it better throughout my life, and I think I'm relearning how to do it now as a father, and I'll tell you why. And then the second thing is something that I learned from a mentor, my college professor, who also was my mentor. Um, and that was a little bit later that I learned. But the first thing I'll say is be committed to consistency. And I say that by saying half the battle is just showing up.
Mm,
And again, this is something that I learned from my brother. When I went to Montana and I was 17 years old on the basketball team, and he was kind of like, hey, look, I know you're going to party. I know you're going to go out and do your thing. He said, the only thing that I would really advise you to do is always go to class, no matter what, and sit in the front.
mm.
And he was like, I don't care how hungover you are.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care if you had a 5 a.m. practice.
Yep.
He said, because if you just sit in the front and you're there and you're present, even if you're not taking notes, even if you're tired, you're still there. The teacher's going to recognize you. You're still going to beat out half of the people that don't even show up half the time to
Totally.
class. And you're just going to be 50% ahead of your competition, you know? And then all of a sudden, like, let's say, you're locked in for 25 to 30% of those classes, which hopefully, if
Yeah.
you're younger, you're taking advice. Hopefully, it's
Yeah.
more than 25 to 30%. But then all of a sudden, now you're, instead of being 50% better, now you're 60%, 70%. And so, I think you're not always going to be at 100% every single day.
I love
But
that. Yeah.
what you can do is just show up and be committed to, doing the work, whether that work is, hey, I only got 10% today, or I only got 50% today. I don't have it all today. You're never going to have it 100% every single day. But as long as you go, you're going to be pushing yourself. And again, just like this podcast is called, you're going to be better, a little bit better that day when you show up. And so the reason why I say I'm relearning it today is because that commitment to consistency becomes harder and harder as
Totally.
you get more and more responsibilities in your life.
Hmm.
You're about to have another baby. Like, you're going to be waking up in the middle of the night. Like, are you going to get up and go work out that next morning? How are you going to get in those things? And your priority list gets shorter and shorter and shorter the more responsibility you get.
That's a good point.
And just being committed to what your priorities are as an individual is really, really important. And then the second thing I'll say is something that I learned, a little slogan that I learned from my professor, which is, if you want to be a compelling person, you have to put yourself in compelling situations.
Whoo! Love that. Can you repeat
And
that?
yeah, if you want to be a compelling person, you have to put yourself in compelling situations. And I think you mentioned this before, but it really just resonates of just like stepping out of your comfort zone, trying things, things that you would know that you may never have thought of doing. And uh, I'll just give you a quick little example of how I've done this in my own life, which is when I finished playing overseas, I came back and was kind of lost and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my mentor, that's what he told me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to be a compelling person?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to do something. I want to be somebody." Right. And he said, "Well, come with me." And he was just starting a program. He said, "We're going to go to the state prisons in Southern
I remember
California.
that. I remember you telling
And
me
we're
about
going to,
this.
yeah, and I want you to tell your story and start to talk to the inmates." And so for like 2 years, I would just go to various prisons in Southern California and meet people and talk to, the students in the classes that I was leading. And I was, whatever, 23, 24 years old. I was a young kid, but I put myself in a situation that I never thought I would be and I never thought I would do. And I grew so much from that experience that I actually got a job at Google working on criminal justice reform because of that situation that I put myself in. Right. And so you never know what's going to come down the road for you in life. But as long as you kind of put yourself out there and are willing to, be vulnerable, I think that's really, really important.
Love it. And it reminds me of a book. It's The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. It's a book she wrote about identity capital. And
Mm,
I don't know if you've read it, but it's
I
like
haven't read it, but I know it's on your book club, so I'm gonna have to look.
in your 20s and in your like whatever era in life, it reminds you of like you always got to be building that identity capital. And identity capital is exactly what you said. If you want something, if you want to be compelling, you got to put yourself in compelling situations. So it's like you got to put yourself out there and you got to keep going forward, right? You got to earn skills. The skill that you were earning was like very few people would tell stories to inmates and be in that certain situation, and that was able to translate into future state, which you weren't even thinking about how that was
Exactly,
going to translate later on in life. Yeah,
exactly,
I love it.
exactly,
Okay, so I got it. Like as we wrap up, the community where you built and what we were part of, which was amazing, is like the respect and competition and accountability. You got to go to grow sometimes. You got to get out of your comfort zone. And I love the advice that you gave because it's going to change and evolve over time. And like, as I'm 2.5 kids in, about to be 3, it's like being committed and consistent is easier with 2 than it is with 3 kids. And so that reminds me to prioritize my list of what I want to accomplish and keep on that track. And then the other one, which I absolutely love is if you want to be a compelling person, you have to put yourself in compelling situations. I love it. I love it, man. Well, thank you so much. As we wrap up, Austin, it was a pleasure, man. I'm thankful for these last 30 minutes. I really did learn a ton. For everyone who's listening, please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, wake up smiling, have fun, and always be better. Cheers. Thank you so much.
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Take care, my man.
See you.